Welcome to Culture Climate, Claire.
Hello.
Hello,
Thank
how
you
are
for
you?
having me.
Fab. So, Claire, tell us a little bit about who you are to start us off.
Okay, I am Clare Evans and I'm a time management and productivity coach and author of Time Management for Dummies. And I work with people one-to-one, doing coaching on time management, productivity, and a whole host of other things that encompasses, because it's about much more than that, but also run workshops and seminars for groups and teams.
I expect you're a very popular person because time and space to do things is always, when I'm coaching people, that always comes out. So, yeah, really useful to have you as part of Culture Camp. So, let's start off with the connection between time management and productivity and organizational culture. And I know we talked a little bit about toxic culture. So let's just unpack that idea of toxic culture. What's your experience?
I think with the environment and the culture of the working environment and the office environment, it can become very toxic when you have personalities in particular. There's that sort of clash of people wanting to climb over everybody else. You can also have the culture of fear. So if you don't get something done or if you do something wrong, you get reprimanded for it. You might even get fired for it, rather than having an environment where people are encouraged with what they do. People are very quick to blame, but less likely to sort of say, okay, well, something's gone wrong, but let's have a look at it and work out what we can do to make it right, or avoid this whole blame culture that comes in, which again drives the whole sort of fear and lack of trust, and people feel sort of afraid and guilty about what they're doing or what they're not doing, and that has an impact on stress levels and people feeling overwhelmed and that they're not being productive. So it really has a knock-on effect. And when I'm working on the leadership side of things, I often see that either the effect or the impact that that's having, and also dealing with both aspects of it. So being on the receiving end, but also how to improve the whole culture and process.
Yeah, and I suppose if people have got kind of time-based targets or productivity-based targets, there's the opportunity there for it to get really toxic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And
So I
something that
wonder how people deal with that.
well, something that also comes in with that is around not having the right strategies or the right systems and processes in place to help people manage that. So when you're trying to sort of deal with it, that again is some of the things that I'll be looking at and working with. It's about priorities, is really understanding what the priorities are, so you can then be in a better position to manage and plan your own time, as well as being in a position to be able to push back if you're getting unrealistic expectations made, or if people are stepping over the boundaries, whether that's on the time that you work or how that you're working or the roles and responsibilities. So those are some of the key things to look at to try and manage that culture or a potentially toxic environment.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's the responsibility lies at a few different levels. So there's that individual responsibility around the target that you have or the task that you have. But then I guess also an organizational responsibility to provide you with the right tools, the right equipment, the right processes to be able to help you do that. And then there's the kind of the cultural side of it. So you mentioned that blame culture before, or the opposite of that, which I guess would be support and encouragement. Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you look at things from that systems view, where you're not just looking at the individual performance, you're kind of widening it out. Is that something you do with your leadership teams?
It is, yes. I mean, looking at how you can get the best out of the people that you have working with you. So understanding leadership styles, management styles, how you can support and encourage and help them to be as productive as possible, as well as on the individual basis of what can I do to increase my productivity so I'm not part of the problem,
Yeah.
but I can become part of the solution? And something that a lot of people will see is the sort of, well, I don't have any ability to change decisions or to question things, or I just get told what to do, or some of these sort of goals and objectives get passed down from sort of higher levels, and it's, I've just got to get on with my job. Whereas if you're in a position to be able to, and this is where people end up feeling overwhelmed and stressed out, but if you can take that step back and think, okay, what are my priorities? What is my role and responsibility? Because people will quite often take on things that are outside of that.
Yeah.
And if I've planned and organized it, and I have a system for managing my work, it's easier for me to be able to see, actually, I've got way more than I can actually cope with or deal with or sensibly manage. And that puts them in a strong position to be able to push back and say to their manager, their director, their team leads, even the boss, CEO, whoever it might be, this is the impact of what I'm being asked to do, or you're asking me to do, or this is the impact it's going to have on the team. And then having a conversation about it and discussing how it can be improved, reduced, changed. What do you need to make it happen? So that's where systems and resources come in. Is it a matter of more time, more money, more people, better skills, training, having the right people in place?
And I see that proactive work approach working with funders as well. So we work with lots of charities, and often when you write your funding application, it might be 6 months or a year before you get that funding, and things change, don't they? Priorities change, people change, the world changes, and I think quite often people are afraid to speak to funders and say, actually, these were the objectives that we put in the application, but now XYZ's happened and we need to change those. And often funders are really willing to have those conversations, particularly if you can demonstrate how your changes still meet their objectives, because often they're investing in you as an organization, not just the project. Right, so when we're talking about world changes, working at home, so when we're working at home, give us some productivity tips or ideas, or how we can get a great culture of time management within our organizations while we're all on Zoom or on screen.
Well, there's the whole sort of working from home, which everyone was doing during COVID, and now more of the sort of the hybrid working environment that people are moving into. So working in an office a couple of days a week, maybe, and working from home the rest of the time. So the whole idea around working generally is around how you plan and prioritize and organize your time. And the same thing applies when you're working from home. Being able to say, I'm in work mode or I'm in home mode, and having a difference between those two areas, which is really difficult when your home is your office and your office is your home, and even more difficult if you don't have the luxury of having a room that is your office, that you're working from sort of the living room or the kitchen table. So, but being able to plan out your time in exactly the same way. So when do I start? When do I finish? What do I need to get done during my day? How do I plan out my week? The benefit of working from home is that you don't have that commuter time. So you could potentially use that to have a really nice morning routine of exercise, looking after yourself, walking the dog. And then being able to have that cut-off point at the end of the day of, I'm closing the office door, either literally or metaphorically, and that's the end of my working day. And I'm not going to get dragged into, I'll just do a few emails in the evening, or I'll just answer a few phone calls. That you have clear boundaries around your time. But also having that flexibility of being able to say, I can take time out during the day because I'm at home to get home work related things done without it necessarily impacting my working day, which
Sure.
there's a lot of guilt goes on about sort of when I'm at home, there are all these tasks and these distractions around me, which is why some people like going into work because they don't
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
So it's about planning and prioritizing your time really, and managing what it is that you need to do during the day.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just thinking about myself. So when you said you don't have the commute, so you can, and my head went immediately, you can start work early. And you said the lovely thing about having a morning routine. And yeah, I've not cracked that one yet. I quite often, if I haven't got a school run, then I appreciate that morning
Mm.
time for work. But what I have found really useful is going to the gym. And it sounds so boring and so like obvious, but actually working from home and then getting out the house and then coming back to the house gives that sort of transition time, or walking the dog after
Yeah.
work. The trouble with the dog is she knows what time I normally walk her. So I can't do late meetings unless I've walked her. Um, yeah, so I think finding ways to make your personal life and your work life kind of work together
Yeah.
are helpful, aren't they?
And then you get the best of both worlds. Then you have that, because that's one of the things that people want when they work from home, is to have
Mm,
that flexibility and to be there as parents or as a
yeah.
partner. And it's, well, why not make the most of that? And actually, as you said, if you don't have the commute, you can start work earlier, but
Yeah.
equally you can finish earlier.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's, and if you can have that flexibility, so that's kind of where the trust comes in from an organizational point of view, is, and I think people were a lot more aware of that during COVID because we
Mm,
had to, we were doing everything on Zoom and the work still got done. And
yeah.
people often find they're more productive when they're at home because they don't have the office distractions going on of sort of people coming up to your desk and, oh, have you got a minute? And that
Mm,
buzz that you get in the office, which is, has its pros and cons. So they can just get on with things and are less distracted. But equally, you do need to be able to have some form of routine around it.
yeah.
And there's, and I quite often work with parents working from home, and it is, how do you structure your day to be
Hmm.
able to manage all those different priorities and commitments that you have? And it can work. You just need to think about it so you don't end
Yeah.
up, which can tend to happen if you work from home and you don't have that commute, is you start early and you finish late because
Yeah.
you don't
That's
have
the
that
trap, isn't
commuting
it?
time. So
Mm,
it's watching that you don't fall into that trap.
yeah.
um, and also communication becomes really important when you're working from home so that you're not feeling isolated. And again, it
Yeah.
depends on the nature of the job and your work, and if you do hybrid work,
Mhm.
you'll see your colleagues, but being able to communicate so you can stay in touch with people, or you have regular Zoom, whether it's chats or meetings. I mean,
Mm,
just having a social chat, because you kind of miss that office interaction going on,
yeah.
of having a coffee chat once a week can be quite helpful to maintain that communication on a more
Mm,
informal way. But also having the right systems and processes in place so you don't have to have those moments that you might have had in the office where you go up to someone's desk or you phone them up and say, have you done this, or what's the status of this,
yeah.
or when's this happening?
Yeah.
That it's all there in some form of system that can be looked at, checked, updated, and everyone knows where
Mm,
everyone else is.
yeah. And I wonder if it'd be really helpful if there was an app. I'm sure there is one. You know how when you're driving a car and you're driving a long distance and it pops up and says take a break. I'm sure there must be an app like that. And I remember during lockdown, an organization that I worked for was they had like a morning stretch. So it was just 5 minutes before the day
Mm,
started and everyone came online and did a bit of a stretch. And it was actually it was lovely. It was really nice to kind of reconnect in that different
yeah.
way and start the day off like that. And it was only 5 minutes. Another really good thing I've heard of recently is I'd be quite interested to get your opinion on timesheets in a minute, because I've had a rocky road with timesheets. I used to really hate them, and I used to think, why aren't we trusting people? And then when I saw in organizations people saying, oh, if they don't, if we didn't have timesheets, everyone would, take the mickey. Those are the organizations where people did take the mickey, and
Mm.
organizations where people were trusted, that's where people kind of got on. But then I was challenged by somebody who works part-time, and she said, well, actually, if I don't do it, I need to do a timesheet for my own accountability, but also to make sure I'm not overworking. I was like, oh, okay, yes, I agree with that
Mm.
too. And then I heard a really good thing from one of our other culture camp conversation people, Liz Mitten, and her organization, they do annual hours. So they have a number of annual hours that they have to do, the team have to do, but they can do those hours when and how they want. And if they want like a block of time off, that they create like a consensus within the group. It's a small team of whether that's okay or who's going to cover, but they work to annual hours rather than weekly or monthly hours, which I thought was quite interesting. So
Mm.
yeah, do you have a perspective on timesheets?
Timesheets in particular.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to mention, you said there's an app that makes you take a break.
Oh yeah.
There's the Pomodoro app.
Oh yes, there is. Yes. Is it
And
40 minutes of
it's
work and then
25 minutes and
oh,
a
25?
5-minute break. So
Mm-hmm.
that, and it's a really good way of making you focus. And some people use it for the whole of their day. And I tend to use it
Yeah,
when I
I've
need to,
forgotten
when I
about
need to
that.
focus.
Uh-huh.
So that does your 25 minutes of work with a 5-minute break. And then
Yeah.
every 4 of those, so that's 2 hours, you do a 30-minute break. You can do
Mm.
longer, and you can adjust them if you want to. So that's one way of using an app
Yeah,
to
great
make you
idea.
take a break. I mean, another one is just simply setting your timer for an hour or
Yeah.
2 hours, and when that goes off, it's like, oh, time to take a break.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. It used to be that with councils, their VPN would drop after a certain number of hours and they'd have to reconnect. So if someone just fell out of a meeting, you'd know that they'd been
Yeah,
working too hard, which is quite a good one.
that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so worksheets.
Timesheet.
I Timesheets. Yeah, I think timesheets can be really useful, and it's something that I will do sometimes with when I first start working with people, or even if I'm doing
Mm,
sort of workshops, is to do a time log so you can see where your time goes. How
okay.
much time are you actually, compared to how much time you think you're spending
Hmm.
in meetings, doing emails, getting distracted, because that
Yeah,
can take up a huge amount of time. So you have a much better idea of where your time goes. Also, from an organizational point of view, and particularly when I've worked with sort of the legal financial services professions, you need to know how to charge your clients. So you
sure.
can only do that by having things like timesheets,
Hmm.
making sure that so much time is being allocated to certain projects. So it gives you an idea of sort of an insight of where your time is going, as well
Hmm.
as on an organizational basis, sort of where the
Yeah.
time is being spent. And yes, for sort of now we have flexible working hours, whether it's sort of part-time, condensed,
Hmm.
etc., being able to keep track of what hours you're working. More often than not, people are actually working much longer hours
Yeah.
than they should be.
Yeah.
So that can be something else that an organization can look at, is how much time is actually going in overtime if they pay
Mm,
overtime, or how much time are people are spending over and above what they're actually contracted to do. And is
mm,
there a reason for that? Is it because the workload is just incredibly high that they're
yeah.
having to put the hours in? Is it because they're not working productively? Can be a little bit of both. Or is it
Mm,
actually that we need additional resources, which again is, if you're tracking your time and you're planning and organizing, that can be a useful tool to be able to say, look, there's enough work
mm,
here for another person, or a person sort of part-time.
yeah.
So with that as well. I think the key benefit of doing timesheets is for those various reasons, but to do
Mm,
it as you go along. So you're not getting
mm,
to the end of the day or the end of the week and
yeah.
thinking, right, what was it I was doing this week? And
Yeah.
trying to sort of make it up and fill it in.
Yeah.
at the end. So being able to keep track of it. And again, there are tools and apps that will track your time in
Sure.
certain apps and things that you're doing that can make life a little bit easier. It might feel a little bit big brotherish, but yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
it has
I'm a
its pros and
big fan of
cons.
tech to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really interesting. And again, relating it back to that kind of charity experience, I guess if you did it for a short period of time, it could act as a bit of a diagnostic to see where you need extra resource, and potentially so a funding application could then be developed from that if you need to bring in
Yeah.
another person or commission, or yeah, within your commissions as well.
Yeah.
So it
And we,
sounds
we
like
actually we did
oh,
that as part of a small charity I work with. We kind
okay.
of went through that exercise of how much time is being spent on all these different tasks that need to be done. When obviously when
Yeah.
you are a small charity, there tends to be an element of you get on and do all sorts of different things. But again, that can help with, well, there's a lot of admin tasks here, or there's a lot of financial tasks here. So could that be, is there somebody else that could actually do that for you?
Yeah.
It's also very useful from a delegation point of view, again, of understanding, and if you take it back into sort of the work environment context of, are you spending a lot of time on admin tasks or
Yeah.
tasks that aren't actually your role and your responsibility, that somebody else could or should be doing?
And I bet you get into some mindset stuff around people not wanting to let things go as well. Yeah, we there's a lot of that within coaching. I think people, there's a lot attached to the tasks that you do, isn't there, and your ownership around them.
And
Fab.
that definitely comes into the whole delegation and how to delegate, when to delegate, and how to let go of things.
Yeah.
And realizing that the more you let go of, the more time it gives you to do the things that you really want or need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the things that you enjoy and you're great at as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Fab. Well, it sounds, Claire, like we all need a Claire Evans in our life. So how do we get one?
You can go to my website, which is
Yeah.
clareevans.co.uk, Claire without an I.
Mm-hmm.
And on there is a free time quiz that you can take to see just where your time habits are and what you're doing. And there are lots of resources on there. My Better Time Habits group on Facebook, you can come and join that and get some tips and information on that. And I'm always putting out new courses to help you improve your time management. And there's lots of articles also within my newsletter that you can sign up for.
Lovely. Well, I will go and sign up for your newsletter and take your quiz. It's been lovely chatting. I feel like I just want to bring all my time questions to you, but this is not. Thank you, Claire. It's been lovely having a conversation.
It's lovely. Thank you very much, Claire.